Hello, and welcome to another edition of Straight from the Training Ground. I'm Jay here, and I'm joined by Michael Dublis and Pedro, one of the co-founders of Love Peace Football. And Pedro, we're glad to have you with us. And also, I want to warn you or congratulate you, I don't know which one, that you're the first partner of the neighborhood, the soccer neighborhood, to actually be on our podcast. So, congrats. And before we get into that, just tell everybody a little bit about your background and what you do with Love Peace Football.
Thank you, Jay. Thank you, Michael. And it's quite an honor to be the first guest, hopefully the first of many, many, because there's a lot of great stuff happening. As the founder of Love, Peace, and Football, what we do is we do a number of different things. So, one, we host weekly pickups, which if you go to our Instagram page, you can keep up with. Two, we also, from time to time, we host kids camps, free kids camps at no cost, where kids can come play and then learn the fundamentals, typically of futsal. And also, we do advocacy here locally through our parks department and other local government agencies to help expand the game of soccer through different channels, right? Through mini pitches to through having our grass fields in better condition and just creating more opportunities. And so we bring essentially the three together, and that's what takes up our time. We're currently a volunteer ran organization. So it's folks that have a passion of the game that really make this run.
That's awesome. And how important is that to have that type of passion interjected in everything you're doing?
I think it's very important. It's this is difficult work. As I was sharing with you all offline, I've been doing this for about 9 years, and most of the time in that 9 years, it's very rare that we see something major happen, right? And from I'm talking about from the perspective of like having a futsal pitch, that we can go and play. Like we barely got our first one here in Fresno, maybe a year ago, and so it's just a passion, to really grow the game, to imagine something different than what we currently have. I have conversations, I've had conversations even growing up as a kid and now as an adult, where folks are really frustrated with this pay to play model when it comes to club soccer, and how the game is very inaccessible to a lot of people. It excludes a lot of people, right? I mean, if you have the funds, if you have the means to be able to play or have your kid play in soccer the way it is now, then all power to you. But the reality is that there's thousands, hundreds of thousands of kids throughout the country that can be nurtured through the game of soccer, but they're not, right. And so my passion really drives just thinking about that we really haven't scratched the surface of what we can be as a soccer nation. Something that really threw me, like put me in awe one time as I was doing some of my advocacy, is that here in Fresno there was a local study done by the Parks Master Plan, or through the Parks Master Plan, and it was discovered that soccer is the most popular or most played sport. It has an its its demand is 125% higher than the national average. And so it makes you think about that. Like if the
Mhm.
same studies are being done, like
Mhm.
where is that reflective? And I imagine that it'll be across the country, right? Like soccer, like if you look at the MLS stadiums, if you look at where pro teams from Europe go, like it gets packed. It's like we have historic turnouts everywhere. Something footy goes, and there's just a lot to grow from.
Yeah, it's you said that I see your passion. I understand your passion. What I guess what I wanted to ask you, because for me it's different. Because with the soccer rebellion, why I started it, I have a little bit of a backstory that gives a little bit of insight and why I would want to do something to make a big difference. So I'm curious for you. What's kind of your story? Where does your passion come from? Was there something in your background and training and playing the game where you're just like, all right, like I got to make a change, or what is your background? I guess a little bit.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I would definitely say it's my upbringing. I was born in Southern California to my parents are both immigrants from Mexico, and something growing up, I really identified with my Mexican culture in particular, because Baja California is not too far from SoCal. I have family there. I have family in Guadalajara who are always visited growing up. And so that's definitely a part of it, right? Like knowing where I come from, being able to visit this country, and just seeing the kids like play soccer everywhere. Like you'll have a random looking basketball court, and it's just custom over there. You have the goals, and then you have the basketball hoop on
Mhm.
top of it, right? You have your mini pitches. Sometimes the turf was coming off, but they're in your neighborhood, right? I remember too, growing up, I really envied folks, or people in the neighborhood in Guadalajara where my grandparents' home is, because there was this empty pool at one point, and the pool at the bottom was flat. So they just drew the lines there, and so that was essentially a mini pitch for them. And so
That's
just
fun.
being exposed to the game in that level, it's just always made me think like, man, like here it's like I have to wait for my practice every other day. Um, and as I got older, like if I wanted to play, like it was just literally be me and the goal sometimes, or me and a couple of
Sure.
friends, on my free time. And there wasn't really a platform for me to play. Like I had this appetite to play every day,
Mhm.
but I really wasn't fed it, right? And even growing up here and there at one of the parks where we host our pickups, like some family and friends, infrequently we would go, right, and play in there. So I feel like the seed was really planted in me at a very young age through my upbringing, that like, hey, like what we have here is it's cool. But it can be a lot different.
Yeah.
And as I got older, I um, I started working with nonprofit organizations about 15 years ago. I've always been attracted to anything really that's from the lens of social equity, and creating, just representing people, advocating for people that are the most unheard or vulnerable in our society. As I got to a certain age, maybe like 21, it just hit me like, hey, like if we're thinking about it from an equity standpoint, the same thing is going on with footy here in the United States. Like,
Mhm.
how is it that there's just all these resources, but we're not really fed our appetite to play the game, you know? And so that's where I decided, circa 2015,
Yeah.
14 maybe. I started. I was really inspired by the U.S. Soccer Foundation's initiative to build mini pitches, futsal courts throughout the country, and that's where I decided to essentially build my own goals out of PVC pipes and start hosting my own pickup games to raise awareness of these type of mini pitches, right? Which was a lot of work to just set
Yeah.
up the pickups, but people loved them. From the get go, we would have like on some nights like 60 people show up, and now that I and some friends restarted our pickups about a year or so ago, like a lot of those same people that were now like teenagers are showing up to our pickup as adults. But to answer your question, yeah, that's it's just that passion just really was really developed over time, and just really coming from a place where I've always wanted to serve people in different ways, and I think I found my place through footy.
Yeah. Man, that is really well said. You articulated that really well, and I wish I was able to do that. I love hearing other people with passion talk about their passion, because the way you said it's like, yes, I feel like that. I just, my brain doesn't work the way yours does. And the way you said that was just perfect. And it's similar to, I feel like the way you said it, like my creative drive felt stemmed growing up playing. I felt like there was something I was always reaching for, that it just was never serviced through the systems of the game in the United States, which is crazy to me. Like, as you know, as a player, how world renowned this language is of soccer, and how diverse the game is when you're in it. That it's so segregated in the United States. It really is a. It's baffling how we turn this into something that was only for profit. But to your point about creative, which I think is really interesting. I'm from New York, and I have this New York street ball kind of influence that's kind of ingrained in me. And when I went, before I listened, played a game, what was in my headphones and the feelings that I had was kind of this New York grit I would be listening to Wu Tang, Tribe, Nas, Biggie, like before games, and that was kind of my perception and vision of the game. Like, I felt like that. Like, I was reaching for this kind of New York street ball with soccer. but yes, the creative freedom felt limited growing up in the system. It was just interesting because our passions just kind of come from different things, but it's still that creative expression that I think that we're still thirsting for, which is it's cool, man. Again, soccer just becomes it's still universal. The language just continues to impress me, and the more I hear about it from different players.
Yeah, absolutely. Pedro, can you tell us? Can you give me like maybe one or two highlights of your time through Love, Peace, and Football? One or two things that really kind of stand out. Maybe a kid or two that came along, or a group of kids, or something that's really kind of fed your passion over the years.
Yes, I think overall, just the perseverance is paying off. As I mentioned earlier, like
Mm-hmm.
most years, it's felt a little bit dry as far as like victories, right? I mean, throughout
Hmm.
the years, just providing the pickups and the space alone, that's valuable alone. But now we're at a place where I feel like we've done a good job making just investing in footy and through the public park system, uh, pretty mainstream here in Fresno, where we're located, and we have a number of parks that are going to include some futsal courts as part of their parks improvements that are coming up. We're at a good place here in Fresno because around that time where I started organizing my the first time I started organizing pickups in 2015, there was a movement to put a parks measure on the ballot to basically force the city into investing in parks because they weren't doing so willingly. And
Hmm.
so it was called Measure P. It was on the ballot like in 2018, and it won, but it won in the courts because there was like this debate whether or not it needed a 50% plus one approval, and it actually it did because it was put on the ballot by the voters. But it wasn't until like Measure P, COVID, when it was announced that was settled in court. And so from 2020-ish till now, we've had this window of opportunity where all of a sudden the city of Fresno has 35 to 40 million dollars a year additional for its parks department that it didn't before.
Right.
Like the operating budget for the parks was about only like 15 to 20 million, and now it's like more than doubled annually, right? And so, because there's all this money, we have the opportunity to go voice ourselves to say, hey, we want this at our parks, we want that at our parks. And it's at the point where like even the folks from the parks department, like they expect me to be there. They come ask me questions, like the perseverance has paid off. And now we're at a point where and throughout the city, there's different parks, new parks and old parks that are being renovated that are going to include futsal courts, or that are going. There's one park in particular in southeast Fresno that's going to be like this soccer complex with multiple soccer pitches and multiple futsal courts, and yeah, it's just it almost feels like the hard work has paid off, where the victories come on their own as far as the investments. And so that's one thing. I know it's a long-winded answer.
No,
That's amazing, man.
this is great.
But yeah, that's one thing. And then also just bringing back the pickups. It's really cool to see that our average age of folks participating in the pickups is about 18 to 25-year-olds, which is a little bit younger than what I am. But it's just really cool to see that there's a new generation of folks that are growing up experiencing this, becoming adults experiencing this, and
Can
we're,
you keep up
we're
with
doing a
them?
good job. Excuse me.
Can you keep up with them when you play with them?
No, no, no. Technically, yes, but not, not on the long sprint.
Yeah. I feel that, man. So much. They turn now. I'm like, okay, you go ahead. You go ahead. I'm not gonna go with you on that one.
Yeah, like I tell them straight up, hey, play my feet. Like, don't
Yeah.
I'll be right here. Just play it to my feet.
play to my feet. Like, don't send no long balls. Like, I'm not gonna get to them. Like,
That's great.
I get it. Okay, so I have a couple questions then. So you're very versed in the landscape and how to work with government to be able to activate. Can you how did you start learning about how you could really make an impact by being this pioneer and spokesperson for implementing futsal courts and just learning about how to use community to really impact what you were doing?
Yeah, so I was very fortunate. It's before my current position. Um, I where I'm working at right now, I had the pleasure of working for an organization as a community organizer for 5 years,
Okay.
from 2018 to 2023, and just working there, I was able to learn more about government, right? How to operate, how to interject, and make sure that people that aren't being heard are being heard. And I learned different strategies of turning people out to a meeting, or just like creating an email campaign to make sure that the voices of local community is heard. And so it's perseverance. Like my educational background, like I have an AA degree, so it's not the most extensive, but I feel through through my passions, which includes what I do with Love, Peace, and Football. I've been able to. That's been my education as far as how government works, right? Like just learning from trial and error, from trying different
Yeah,
things, by
right.
not being afraid to speak up. At a city council meeting, or whatever, what have you, meeting. You just different just being perseverant, different doors will open themselves. And I feel blessed to be where I'm at now, as far as what I've learned professionally, and how I've grown through my passions.
Spoken like a true leader, man. Yeah, trial and error. I think a lot of people are afraid to fail, but I mean that's how you learn. So I 100.
Absolutely. It's a great lesson out there for you kids.
To go with that, so obviously you kept going with this, and I mean you're doing this for 9 years now. What what do you see pickup do for the community and the soccer community? What have you seen it do? Like what's like I know you're seeing it grow, but if you could sum it up in a few words, what do you see that hosting pickup, having this free opportunity to play that is inclusive? What do you see it do for community?
It it brings people together. I don't know if y'all have seen this phenomenon in where you all live at, but here in Fresno, we've experienced it to a certain degree, where a lot of our parks investments are a group that's getting priority is the pickleball community.
Yes.
And here in Fresno, it's a very small minority that people that even play pickleball or even know what it is, right? But I think we can draw some lessons from them, because they're very well organized. I mean, it helps that they're retirees and they don't have much else to do. But they're very well organized, and they know how to hype up their sport.
No doubt.
Um,
Pickleball is awesome. I played
yeah,
that.
yeah.
It was everywhere. I went on a lunch break, and there were like these 65-year-olds schooling me with these angles. Pickleball is dope. I don't mean to get you off track, but
No,
yeah,
no, yeah, it is dope. It's a fun sport, and if you're new to you're looking for something new, I do recommend it. It's pretty easy to learn it.
yeah,
And but what I like about their movement in particular is that a lot of people share that they enjoy pickleball because of the friendships that they make.
yes,
And it's the same thing at our pickups.
yeah,
It's just, instead of it being like an mostly elder population, with us it's mostly a younger population, where we have folks that went to high school maybe at this part of the city, that are meeting people from the opposite side of our city through our pickups. And so we're just causing that enculturation, I guess you could say, where throughout our city we got people from different backgrounds. They're meeting each other, they're befriending each other, they're inviting each other to each other's small-sided indoor teams, and it's just a vibe, like we show up, we're setting up, some people help set up and take down when we're done. We're always greeting each other. Like, I'm meeting people that I haven't met, from a different background, much different than mine, and other people are experiencing the same. And so it's just added so much color to our local parks, that that I feel like we're just scratching the surface of what a proper park system could be like. We're not by any means working for a parks department or anything like that, but the work that we do can really be should be taken serious by parks professionals, because it's if we can do that with being an unofficial nonprofit with zero to very limited resources. Like, all the stuff that we have is like donated, like our operating budget is literally zero. And if we can do that with just passion, then imagine where when resources are redirected properly, like what you can do.
yeah.
you could do a lot, right? And so yeah, just adding the color that way. And I think too, something that really motivated me to do this is a quote from Johan Cruyff, where I don't remember the quote word for word, but he basically talked about how what growing up, like yes, he had his academy with Ajax, right, where he developed. But what really helped him flourish and like get that creative side, develop that creative side of in the sport is that um, he just playing pickup with his friends in the streets, you know. And I think that when it comes to soccer here in the states, it's just really cool to see, especially because we also do pickups for our younger kids, kids from 6 to 12, and you have like these young kids that are learning how to compete with older kids, you know. So just being able to create that environment where a little kid can kick butt, you know, and
Yeah.
just develop that way is amazing.
Yes, I 100% agree with you, and that leads into my next question. And then also with that, Zidane said, Ronaldinho saying, that's where, and these are the best players to ever play the game, are saying exactly that. Like playing in the street has given them that creative versatility in the game that I feel like, especially in the States, is missing so much. That creative side of things, everything is so stagnant. Um, so now going in my next, and Jay, I'm sorry, man, I've never done this before, so I hope I'm not like taking over here.
You're doing good. Keep it up. Keep it
I
up.
just talk to Pedro. Like I'm whatever. Like I know we're on a podcast, but like these are just questions. If we are at a bar together, there might be some beer and tequila involved. But it's but from a kid's side, how important do you think, like kids development? How important do you think pickup is?
I think it's very important because it's what I've noticed in the pay to play model is that you have these kids that are showing up and maybe they have their personal trainer and maybe they like to play, but it seems like from a young age you teach these kids that it's what you're doing is more like a job, right? Like you have to be good, you have to be good, right? You have to be the best. But through our pickups, you're developing kids to love the game more. It's just like, hey, like no rules, or I mean there are rules, but like there's nobody yelling at you telling you what to do, right? It's just like you decide how, like you have a blank canvas, you decide how to paint it, right? And so I think it's really important to teach the game in that way, or just put kids in the opportunity to develop in that way, because that's how you develop the best players, right? Just the wizards that are just willing to try things on their own.
And that's I agree. So I started doing clinics last year, and I'm a coach. I coach within the system a little bit, and I didn't realize how much of a joystick coach I was when I built this clinic. And the philosophy was just let them play. So I had to coach the parents and say, "Hey, you're just their biggest fan. Let them play." And we did a 4-week clinic, and the way they developed and their comfort and their decision making after that 4-week clinic was astronomical compared to any other kind of structured clinic I've ever done before when it was built around technique and tactics. So to your point, a kid, he's you're so much being talked at him. Like sometimes I just need to, like you said, paint on the canvas, learn to paint outside the lines, inside the lines, and they'll figure this out and start creating the game in their own image. So I think that's great. But the struggle that I had, and I'm curious to hear what you think on this, was the education I had to have with parents was more in depth than I thought it would have to be. Like I had to tell them, no, this isn't supposed to be ultra structured. Did you find anything like that when you've hosted camps or anything?
No, no, it's just I, I've ingrained that in my style of coaching, and it's at the rec level too. My buddy that helps me out, he is more on the comp side, and
Okay.
same thing with him. He's had that style from the get go, so we haven't had any pushback quite yet. But I do have to interject because I'm late to a work meeting. But I'm down to do a part two though. I've loved it, and I feel like we can go on and on for sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely, man. Hey, well, no problem, Pedro. If you're just tuning in, we love what you've been doing.
Yes.
We appreciate Pedro from Love Peace Football. Please check them out. They're partners with us on the Soccer Neighborhood. You can check us out and get in touch with us if you'd like to become a part of that neighborhood that promotes free play for kids in our country. And again, thanks for joining us on Straight from the Training Ground, Pedro. Keep up the great work, man. We love what you're doing.
Yeah. Pleasure to meet you, brother.
Pleasure to meet you, Michael. Thanks again, Jay.
Check out our friends at Duke Brand FC for all of your coaching needs, notebooks, and more. Visit our friends at TractionSocks.com for your grip socks.